We know that already the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana have embarked on a strike, demanding what they describe as neutrality allowance, which has been a bone of contention over the last few years. For many on social media, this is, in the first place, misplaced. Some Labour watchers have described this as a non-starter. My colleague, Lord Edwasari, has been checking up on the impact of the strike by the CLOGSAG members, and here's his report.
We are here at the Ministries following the indefinite strike action called by the members of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana following the non-payment of their neutrality allowance. Now, usually around this time, there's a lot of activities here, and here is always buzzing. But if you look closely, you realize that there's very little going on because members are on strike. Our further checks, however, indicated that some of these people that you see around are here because they are in to help or assist their supervisors who they say they need to meet some targets. You would recall that Executive Secretary of the National Labour Commission, Mr. Ofosu Asama, noted that the strike action had been called off because of a meeting that his outfit had with the CLOGSAG members. But when we spoke to some civil servants here who refused to speak to us on camera, they said that the announcement was made yesterday of the indefinite strike. That's how come a lot of people who are normally here to work are absent today. We'll be keeping tabs on this issue and see how it goes. Lord Edwasari, TV3, Accra.
And we'll be running some checks in parts of the country. We will be going to the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi, to also see the situation there, whether or not the strike by CLOGSAG is impacting any services there at all. We'll be crossing over live there. But we know that it has generated such a storm on social media with many individuals, throwing up various conversations in the last 12 hours, people questioning, first of all, the basis for such an allowance, and then, many others. We'll be having a conversation about this. But we know that the civil and political rights of public servants have been already enshrined in the Constitution and even the Civil Service Code of Conduct for members of the civil service. That's the CLOGSAG members who are currently on strike. We'll be getting into all of that. My colleague, head of News TV3, will be joining us to have a conversation around this. But let's just quickly run through the Civil Service Code. Says persons holding civil service positions, we know, are barred from participating in political activities. These include attending political rallies, wearing of party paraphernalia, subjecting oneself for party vetting, holding party membership cards, and standing for party primaries, for example. And beyond that, there's also the provisions of a Civil Service Code of Conduct, which was issued sometime November 1999, the sections 12, 1B, and E, which also says, for example, civil servants may not accept any office, paid or unpaid, permanent or temporary, in any political party, etc., or declare himself openly as a registered member of a political party or association. And it goes on and on and on. Jifa Bampo is joining me for a conversation. Thank you, Jifa, for joining us. So these are the controversies that have come up in the last 12 hours since CLOGSAG embarked on this strike action. We also know that the law is clear on what they can do and what they cannot do when it comes to politics. What are some of these? All
right, so first we need to put this in context. So government is willing to pay a 20% bump for these local government service workers, and it's being named a neutrality allowance. That is where there's a bone of contention, because the view is that we cannot pay individuals who are specified in the Constitution to be neutral. It is a requirement under the Constitution, it's a requirement under their Code of Conduct, and it is also a requirement for them based on our law. So to start with, if we're going to do this, then it means we are changing what the law says, and it means government needs to be minded. And apart from that, there have also been Supreme Court rulings on this issue. So for instance, if you talk about Article 55 of the Constitution, it talks about who can be a founding member or leader or executive of a political party. But you cannot be in that position if you don't meet certain requirements. Right. And then you must read that article together with Article 94B of the Constitution, where it talks about the institutions in which if you work or if a person works, then they cannot contest to be a member of parliament whilst they remain in those positions. Right. It is true, the rules have not been fully enforced, and so there have been people who've infracted and have gone on to contest elections at various levels and have become MPs without leaving the service. But the ideal situation is you must leave these services, the audit service, the judicial service, the civil service, the local government service, in order to go and contest these. There is one court case, though, that gave a caveat. It's the 2017 Supreme Court case, which gave a caveat that someone in the local government services could contest at the local level elections because those are non-partisan. However, when the person wins and takes the oath of office, the person will still have to leave their position in whatever local government assembly or structure they work in, because you cannot be in an assembly to be taking decisions and yet work in the civil service structure. Exactly. So those are the caveats there. So the challenge is this amount that CLOGSAG and members are fighting for. Government needs to look at what the nomenclature is. We cannot pay people to be neutral if they are in these services. If government wants to give a bump to their salary, that's all well and good, but it cannot be named as a neutrality allowance,
which is causing all of the storm that we've seen on social media. Well, let's head to Kumasi now, because many individuals who went to some of these ministries, departments and agencies to assess public services were disappointed. Most of them had to leave. My colleague, Ibrahim Abubakar, has been checking.
The Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana has this morning begun an indefinite strike to demand for neutrality allowance. Now, the group says, in spite of several reminders to the Finance Ministry, their concerns are yet to be addressed. At the ministries here at Edum in Kumasi, the impact of the strike is being felt. Members of CLOGSAG in the various ministries and government agencies have heeded to their leadership advice to boycott work. Most offices have been locked, signifying the strike.
I'm here this morning to check on the controller. There is a problem on my payslip. I've been here for several times. This is about the seventh time that I've been here. But when I came this morning, they said they are on strike. So I don't know what to do right now. So I've been going up and down. I'm coming now from Mancranso. Look at the TNT involved, the inconveniences involved. And I didn't meet them. So I'm quite disappointed.
Basically, I came to the social welfare to make some few inquiries. And we got here this morning and we're told they are not working because they are basically on strike. Yes. Coming from a far distance just to make an inquiry and you can't be attended to, it's quite very bad. Yes, wasting of resources. Yes, I think that our leaders should meet them at their point of their needs. Whatever that they want, they should help them out. Yeah.
Alexander Obin is the Ashanti Regional Chairman of CLOGSAG. What will it take for CLOGSAG to call off this strike or suspend it?
Oh, all that you need is, as we are in the local government or civil service, you know the process of which one goes through before payment is expected. When you write a memo, you go to finance. The finance will mean to a controller for the payment to be effected. All that you need is finance will forward the MOU to controller for the payment to be effected. As soon as that is done, I hope our national executive will call off the strike. Yeah. When it comes to going on strike, so far as CLOGSAG is concerned, we don't take delight in going on strike. Why so? Because we are close to the government. As for me, for example, I'm a budget officer at my district. I go to DC office at times, 10 times, whatever times. So look at our closeness with this government. So before the CLOGSAG or embark on strike, then it means it's a last resort. We've tried all the avenue, and now we don't have any option than to embark on strike. So all that we are pleading with government is very simple. They should adhere to our grievances, address this. As soon as they address it, we are ready to go back and work with the government. As simple as that.
Now, these security personnel behind me told me they have been stationed here to ensure compliance of the strike by members. We will be monitoring development in the various government agencies and update you subsequently. Ibrahim Abubakar, TV3 News, Kumasi.
Let's get some legal perspective on this development, and private legal practitioner Theophilus Jimega is joining me for a conversation. Thank you, Counsel, for joining us. So the law has been clear on the civil and political rights of persons who work in the civil service, that they cannot, dabble in political activities, hold political offices while still remaining in the service. Now the storm has been thrown out there with respect to this allowance termed neutrality allowance, which is raising many questions. Many have said it is an illegal payment that is being made to these persons when they compare this to what the law says about what these individuals who work in the service must be and do. What does the law say, for example, if this has to be done? Must there be an amendment to the law, for example? Hello, Mr. Jimega. I'm afraid, Mr. Jimega, we've just lost him there. But let's just get onto social media. Many of you have been reacting to this particular conversation about this neutrality allowance, what exactly it entails. Hopefully, we can get a better line to Counsel Theophilus Jimega. Thank you. Mr. Jimega, can you hear me now? I'm afraid he cannot hear me. Let's get some of the social media comments. I'll be getting into those shortly. They will be displayed. Many people raising questions about the neutrality allowance. In fact, the nomenclature, so-called, of this allowance and what exactly it is meant to do, if it is not a duplication of what exactly they are to do. So, for example, Franklin Kujo, he's the Money Africa boss, he said neutrality allowance for civil service persons is fraudulent and must be scrapped. We'll take a lot more. Francis Kennedy Oklu says, how on earth are civil and local government workers being paid neutrality allowances? Allowance for being politically neutral? Majority of them are even more political than most open politicians. That's Francis Kennedy Oklu there. Elvis Dako says, I don't understand some of these things we do in this country. We use employment into public institutions to create all kinds of allowances to milk the state. Elvis Dako there. And so those are some of the comments on social media on this. People generally questioning the neutrality allowance in terms of a nomenclature as it is. Hopefully, Theophilus Jimega, private legal practitioner, can hear me this time. Counsel, are you able to hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Great. Many have said, for example, these allowances that are being paid in the form it is at the moment as neutrality allowances are illegal payments that are being made to these, civil and public servant staff because the law is clear on what they must be and do when they want to remain in the service.
Yes, good afternoon. I just hope you can hear me because your line was a bit bad.
I can hear you.
Let's try. Yes, the law which the Civil Servants Association and Local Government Association, CLOGSAG for that matter, are contesting, that bars them from contesting public offices, holding political offices while still in office. If they look at the article they are contesting very well, it talks about the fact that for public interest. So the law is looking at a situation where the public interest overrides their interest. Now, if you decide to be a politician and still be a local government official or civil servant, just resign, as the law has stated. Now, there have been a number of Supreme Court rulings. Notable among them is the one where CLOGSAG itself had gone to court with the Attorney General, the Office of the Head of Civil Service, and the Head of Local Government Service, where the Supreme Court held that one cannot be a member of the civil service and still hold a political office or contest elections. Now they are talking about neutrality allowance or loyalty allowance. Now, where does that one come from? The law, our constitution is clear that any law that contravenes the constitution to that extent of contravention is null and void. So where are they getting that neutrality and loyalty from that they want to impose on us?
Okay.
I found it a bit weird that they contend that the Ministry of Employment, the office,
Hello, Mr.
the office of the senior minister had sat down with them and had negotiated this allowance.
Okay.
It beats my mind.
But they have argued, for example, that, well, the disparities when it comes to the salary structure of these civil servants and the politicals, properly so-called, is rather vast. And so as a measure to sort of bridge this gap and, just top up a little bit, give them a bump, they decided to raise it by 20%. It is just the nomenclature, the naming of it that particularly is raising concerns. You don't think perhaps if they must legitimize this, then there could be, an amendment to the existing law, for example, so this can be legitimized?
If we feel that there is a problem with the single spine salary structure, let us solve that. My investigations reveal that the CLOGSAG particularly is fighting for this allowance because they feel that the others mentioned in Article 94 3B, the armed forces, the police, etc., are being paid this allowance. So since they have also been mentioned in that same article, they need to be paid that allowance. For example, they feel that the fire service, the immigration service, the legal service, the judicial service, the statistical service, etc., are being paid this amount. So they also feel that they need that allowance to be paid. That cannot be the situation.
Okay.
Because according to the single spine salary structure, everybody is paid according to a certain structure. So if it is that structure that has a problem, let us correct it. But we cannot be paying something to say neutrality allowance. Neutral to what? Let us look at other jurisdictions. For example, in the UK, the civil service studies every political party's manifesto so as to advise the incoming government about the manifesto of Party A, Party B, and Party C. For example, if Party A wins and they feel that there is something from Party B's manifesto that could help with the growth of the economy of the country, they advise Party A leaders that this was in Party B's manifesto. Can you consider it? Those are the reasons why they need to be neutral in the first place. Right. Because you cannot go to an office which is a civil service office and you are told that I belong to political Party B. And since you belong to political Party B, Party A, I cannot attend to you. Then wherein lies the public interest for which the law was made?
Great. Thank you, private legal practitioner Theophilus Jimegade, helping us with some legal perspective on this matter. We know that the CLOGSAG leadership is in a meeting, we understand, with the National Labour Commission and some of the other stakeholders. As we speak now, we'll be monitoring that particular meeting. We'll bring you updates subsequently. But let's cross over to the northern region, where my colleague Christopher Marco has been running some checks. Christopher, what's the situation with respect to the impact of the strike?
Yes, so for here in the northern region, the situation is different because some members of CLOGSAG they've been to work today because having visited some of their offices, I saw some of them and interacting with them, they told me that just as it happened the previous time when the strike was declared, and in the next 3 hours they were asked to get back to work because it was called off. This time, they do not want to take part in the strike now for their leadership to call it off later. So they have gone to work until their leadership ensure that the strike is taking effect. Actually, that will be when they will join the strike. But for now, they are busy with their work.
Thank you, Christopher Marco there, my colleague there, running some checks in the Northern Regional Capital. Let's get on the phone again and speak to Engineer Dr. Nana Atto-Arthur. He's the head of a local government staff association. Thank you, Doc, for joining us. So now we know that there are serious concerns when it comes to the running of some of these structures. Some people claim that because of the politicization, for want of a better word, of some of the roles in these civil service organizations, individuals who work ordinarily in the civil service, are already embittered because the salary structure the gap is immense. And so a thing like this, an allowance like this, is fair for them. How do you react to this as the head of a service? And going forward, the reactions that have come through so far, how can we deal with this?
Hello.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, please.
Great. Some have said that the disparity in the salary structure of the politicals and the civil service staff is what is fueling the crave.
It's not clear. I can't hear you.
Let me try one more time, Doc. Is it better now?
Hello?
Hello, Doc?
Yes, please.
Is it better now?
I think it's better now. What is the question, please?
Great. Some have said in the last few hours since CLOGSAG declared their intention to embark on the action which they are currently enforcing, that there is huge disparity in the salary structure, plus what many appear to say is the politicization of some of the roles of civil servants is what is fueling the crave for any increment in allowances or any forms of allowances at all in any form for these individuals who work in these roles. For you as the head of a service, I'm sure this has come to your attention.
Yes, it has come to my attention. And I can also tell you that government has really accepted to really increase salaries of civil and local government services staff. That led to a memorandum of understanding that government signed with CLOGSAG, the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana. What is now the problem is this, that the date for the implementation didn't come up at the time that it was supposed to be done. As a result, CLOGSAG has embarked on the strike. But I must admit that government is seriously engaging CLOGSAG on this. Yesterday, government, represented by the Minister of Employment and Labour Relations, Honorable Bakwewa and his deputy, Minister of Finance, represented by the Deputy Finance Minister, Honorable John Kuma, the Chief Director, Finance, myself, the Head of Civil Service, and his team, CLOGSAG Executive, we all met yesterday and we've agreed that today, 3 p.m., we're going to continue with the engagement. So I believe that by the time we are done with the meeting today, hopefully, CLOGSAG will be able to call off the strike.
And for example, some have said that right now we know that the laws are clear on what the public servants are to do in terms of, staying in the middle, properly so-called. But now the introduction of allowance, now called neutrality, is raising some concern. Is it time for the law to be amended so some of these payments will be legitimized and now have a change in nomenclature?
I don't want to comment on the nomenclature neutrality allowance. Pardon me, let's finish the meeting today and I'll be able to speak to the issue. I just do not want to comment on the nomenclature neutrality allowance.
Right.
Allow me to go for today's meeting and I can come back to you, please.
We'll indulge you, Engineer Dr. Nana Atuatha. He's the head of the Civil and Local Government Service, speaking to us on this subject. We'll be monitoring that meeting that is expected to happen at 3 p.m. We'll bring you updates as they become available.